can't see my face. Come closer, mirror. If you can see, can you see my mirror? That's what that is. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime. Crue Trime. If you are new here, hello. My name is Sara, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup while I do it. So if that sounds good to you, then just go ahead and subscribe to this channel before you leave, or just, right now, and then that way you won't miss any of my new uploads. I'm continuing to adjust my lighting. I turned off the air conditioner. I'm probably gonna combust, but it's all for you, okay? It's for science. So we are continuing our tour of the United States, every state in the Union, and today's video brings us to the state that has the most towns named after cities in foreign countries. Interesting nugget. It's also the home of the Greenbrier Bunker. Google it, it'll blow your mind. This is the Mountain State.
You want to hear the Boone County mating call? Come get it, baby.
West Virginia. Today's story is recommended by Danielle Davis, so thank you, Miss Danielle, I appreciate you. This is the prom night murders. So, let me secure my bangses. Oh, I'm sweating already. Whew, pits are sweating. So yes, I'm putting makeup on while I'm telling this terrible story, but I don't really talk about the products as I'm using them, so if you're interested to see what it is, look in the description box, because everything's linked. Alright, so before we get into the actual details of the prom night story, let's talk about the town that it happened in. So Huntington, West Virginia has a population of around 50,000 people, and it's also the home of Marshall University, which some of you guys might know about.
It's ready for hits.
My shoulder's fine.
Yes or no?
Yes, it's that Marshall. So Marshall University was founded in 1837 as a subscription school, which is just another way to say private school. It then later became a public research university and was named after John Marshall, the fourth Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. So Marshall University has had its share of scandal and issues over the years. And this is even before the big football plane tragedy. They suffered a devastating flood. There wasn't any money, no funding. The football stadium fell into disrepair and was condemned. By the late 1960s, the athletic program there was in deep shit over some recruiting violations with the NCAA. It was a mess. So cut to November 14th, 1970, the football team was returning from an away game in North Carolina in Greenville, East Carolina University. Go Pirates! I went to ECU, thank you very much. So they were on a chartered airplane back to West Virginia. The plane clipped the tops of the trees and it crashed 2 miles from the local airport. The 75 passengers on board were all killed, including 37 football players, 5 coaches, and 25 boosters who were some of Huntington's most prominent citizens. It was devastating. The university was then and still is the backbone of the town. It took many years for the town itself to get past that devastation. There was a ton of funerals that spanned over weeks. There was a memorial fountain built at the student center to commemorate this loss. And the movie We Are Marshall tells the story of the team's return to victory.
It'll be a lot hotter than that, Nate.
So what does this have to do with the story today, the prom night murders? Nothing. Nothing at all. It just happened in the same town, so I went down a rabbit hole, okay, you guys? Actually, I have a research helper now. Shout out to Jeannie. Hi, Jeannie. So she found a lot of really interesting nuggets about this case, and also this very clear sense of spirit in Huntington, togetherness in the town. Also, prior to this case, Huntington, West Virginia averaged only about 6 murders per year, so that's a pretty low crime rate for that population. I mean, is it 6 murders out of 50,000 people? Is that low? I don't know things. Okay, math. Okay, so let's talk about prom night 2005. On May 22nd of 2005, prom was going to be held at the convention center in downtown Huntington called Big Sandy. It's Big Sandy's Superstore Arena, must be the sponsor. Anyways, the locals call it Big Sandy. Civic center, convention center, basically. So prom was scheduled from 8 p.m. to midnight, and then there was an after prom lock-in at the high school from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. So if you're not familiar with the concept of a lock-in, it's like an overnight social event You know, nobody goes in or out. It's very controlled. It gives kids, teens, a safe place to go and have fun activities to do while keeping them away from like drugs and alcohol. You know, this is like an alternative to after prom parties. So the lock-in at Huntington had a check-in list, and like I said, it started at 1 a.m. The students had to be on the list and inside the school by 1, but we'll come back to that. 17-year-old Michael Christopher Dillon was a junior at Huntington High School, and his girlfriend, Megan Brooke Poston, was a student at Cable Midland High School about 20 minutes away. Michael was described as funny and extremely kind. He was one of those guys who would just like go out of his way to make you smile. He played on Huntington's football team and was a good student, getting all A's. He was a great role model for his brother and sister as well. Megan was also very well liked. She actually had planned to, go to school to study early childhood education and work with disabled kids. 16-year-old Megan was the oldest of 3 children. She had a younger brother and sister. Megan got ready for the prom with her mom Sabrina, and she dressed in a beautiful pink and yellow dress. So once she was all gussied up and ready to go to the prom, she drove over to her dad's house. Her dad's name was Kenny. Drove to his house to take some pictures. Kenny later said that he'll never forget how beautiful she looked that day. After that, Michael and Megan headed over to Ritter Park to the Rose Garden so that they could have pictures and some video taken together. Okay, so Michael and Megan went on to the prom at Big Sandy. Several students recall seeing them there. Nobody could imagine that that night was going to end the way that it did. So at the end of the night, Megan's aunt picked the couple up from Big Sandy and gave them a ride to Huntington High School so that they could attend the lock-in. So although Megan's aunt said that she saw them walk inside, they never signed in. We now know that these little tricksters, they ditched the lock-in and instead went downtown to a diner called Rocco's. Alright, so Megan and Michael are downtown at the diner, and also at the same time, 19-year-old Dante Ward was also downtown, but he was at a nearby sports bar called Fat Cats. Cats with a Z. Dante had graduated from Huntington High School the year before. He also had really good grades, he was a good kid, and he actually had plans to open up a clothing store with his father, David. I need to finish my eyebrows off camera, because these look crazy. Dante was downtown to meet up with his good friend, 17-year-old Edric Clark. So Edric went to school at South Point High School, which was about 20 minutes away, like just over the Ohio River in South Point, Ohio. But he and Dante had basically grown up together, playing sports and all that jazz. He excelled at sports, and he was actually set to graduate the very next week with straight A's from South Point High School. So Dante is downtown at Fat Cats with a Z, meeting up with his bestie Edric to celebrate their birthdays. That night was actually Edric's 18th birthday, and the next day was Dante's 20th birthday. I mean, lots of celebrating to do. So the rest of the chain of events is kind of unclear, but here's a few things that we do know. Michael and Megan are at Rocco's Diner, which was very close to Fat Cats. Megan needed to get back to the school before the end of the lock-in, 5 a.m., because her aunt was going to be picking her up. So Michael knew Dante from school. Remember, they played sports together, and he also knew Edric. I don't know whose car it was. Was it Dante's car, Edric's car, whatever. But they were all going to give Michael and Megan a ride back to the school. But on their way, they decided to stop at Dante's house. So by the time they get to Dante's house, which really wasn't that far away, but just sort of on the other side of town, it's 4:30 in the morning. They only have 30 minutes to get back to school, okay? Cutting it close. So one of Dante's neighbors, a 12-year-old little girl who lived next door, she would later tell investigators that she was awakened by the sound of what she thought was cannons. She also heard a girl's voice begging for mercy. By the time the first responders arrived to administer help, they were all dead. 3 of them were lying on the lawn. 1 of them made it to the hospital, but then expired. So back to the other side of town, at the school where the lock-in is, Megan's aunt was there to pick her up, but obviously she never came out of the building. So she called Megan's parents, Kenny and Sabrina Poston. The security guards let them search the building. She wasn't there, of course. They also went to local hotels, anywhere you would think some prom goers might end up, By this time, Michael's parents started to get worried as well. So yeah, it was a small town, but it took about an hour for law enforcement to kind of make the connection and break the news to the parents. Michael and Megan were 2 of those 4 kids that had just been shot and killed. Okay, so immediately arriving on the crime scene are local police officers, detectives, and even the mayor.
This is what people awakened to early Sunday morning. In fact, I can tell you personally, I went to church Sunday morning. Somebody at church said, "Did you hear what happened? There are 3 bodies laying in a front yard not far from here." And so I went right to the station, grabbed a camera, went down, and it was just a horrible scene. One of the people who had been shot had been taken to the hospital. He was still breathing, police and EMS said when they arrived, but it didn't take long. They said that he died actually on the way to the hospital or at the emergency room.
Also, local residents started to gather, Remember, it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. And these were local kids, and the locals wanted answers. By the next day, there would be a theory emerge to explain what happened, but spoiler alert, this case is still unsolved. All that said, here's what they think happened. According to police, there was a Huntington-Detroit drug connection. In recent years, a drug and guns trade between Huntington and Detroit had emerged in the local area. There had been a big push of crack cocaine and then later opioids and stuff that came from Detroit moving down into Huntington because they could get more money. The day after the shootings, police actually carried out 2 separate raids in a rush to try to gather evidence for this case. Unfortunately, even though arrests were made in connection with those raids, nothing directly connected them to the prom night shooting. Dante had no criminal record at all. In fact, he did volunteer work with youth groups and the Huntington Housing Authority, and he was known as a good kid. But they did know that he had only lived in that house for 2 months. Maybe they were after the wrong person, and whoever had lived there previously, and the other kids were just collateral damage. We also know that on June 2nd, 2005, 2 detectives traveled away from Huntington to Detroit, and it's later revealed that they were on the hunt for a lady named Sharalethea Bunny Holmes. Bunny Holmes was a local drug dealer that they'd been watching for some time, and she was arrested on unrelated drug charges a day later. 4 days after that, on June 6, 2005, a Detroit FBI agent testified that Huntington authorities had 3 confidential informants suggesting that Bunny Holmes ordered shooters from Detroit to kill Dante Ward after he allegedly ripped off money and or marijuana from one of her crack houses. In late July 2005, the police received a statement from a man named Shannon Davis. He claimed that he was the getaway driver the night the 4 kids were killed. He said that Bunny paid his friend Jamal Ray $1,500 to kill Dante over weed that she claims that he stole from her. He said that he drove a 1987 white Chevy Monte Carlo over to 1481 Charleston Avenue, where they rushed up on the house, and then Jamal Ray shot and killed the 4 teenagers. Afterward, they drove over the Ohio River and took the gun and just threw it out the window into the water. So the police used his statement to get a search warrant of the house that Jamal Ray was staying at, 1897 Marshall Avenue in Huntington. The search yielded 2 firearms, which got him arrested because he was a felon and felons can't have guns. However, neither one of the guns that they recovered from the home were able to be linked to the crime, which makes sense because he says that they threw it into the river. Alright, so Jamal got a weapons charge that landed him back in prison for 34 months. He pled guilty. So meanwhile, police are still trying to solve this crime. They're not really any closer, although they do have some suspects and connections to this Bunny Holmes person. On April 6th, 2006, Sabrina Poston, Megan's mother, went on the Montel Williams show. Why? To talk to Sylvia Browne. You guys know how much I love Sylvia Browne. Piece of shit. Anyway, so Sabrina Poston, desperate for answers that could help solve her daughter's murder, essentially. She goes on the show, she talks to Sylvia Browne, and Sylvia Browne tells her that the 4 men responsible were men that lived in Huntington and that were involved in the local drug ring. Really, Sylvia? Oh, amazing. You just pulled that right out of your frizzy witch head? It wasn't the 2 months before this. There was federal court testimony where Bunny Holmes pointed the finger at 4 dudes in Huntington? Okay. See you, Sylvia. Obviously, this baloney that she offered was not helpful and did nothing to solve the case. So, a year later, on May 20th, 2006, Huntington High School hosted the prom again, first one since the shootings. A Huntington High School senior also organized the first Teen Issues Day at Ritter Park. The purpose of the event was to highlight, drug, alcohol, and violence prevention and awareness. Teen Issues Day actually continues to be an annual event in Huntington. The citizens in the community of Huntington treated the location of this crime a little differently than what we've seen in past stories. Oftentimes, a community is just so stricken by events like this, they end up tearing down the house, or they'll build a memorial in its place or just a park. In this case, the community really rallied together, to heal, much like they had in the Marshall tragedy. It seemed like everybody wanted to help. Mary Lyons is a Huntington citizen that lived on Ann Street. She wasn't directly affected by any of this, but she definitely wanted to help. She contacted the families of these victims. On June 3rd, 2005, she met with all of the families at the First Century Bank. This was just immediately after the shootings, and it was the first time that many of these families had really met each other. So the reason that she brought them together at this bank was to start a reward fund, and she had already started collecting the money for them. Megan's mother said that kind of kindness just blew her away, right in the middle of enduring unimaginable pain. Also, the Huntington All Saints Anglican Church bought the house that the 4 teenagers were killed at. And with the help of the community, they turned it into a community center and they named it the Hope House.
The fact that 4 kids were shot on this property means that something was wrong in our community. People are always talking about, oh, ain't it terrible, ain't it awful? Somebody should do something about that. Well, here's an opportunity. Let's do something about it.
The initial intention of Hope House was to provide a place for teens to kind of come together and have a place of hope and mentoring and education. On May 19th, 2007, on Teen Issues Day, a march was held from Ritter Park, where the Teen Issues Day was being held. A march was held from there to the Hope House, where they did the official dedication. Dante's grandmother later said that she is just so happy and grateful that they kept the house standing because it gives her a place to stop and pray and talk to her grandson. She said that she always honks her horn when she drives past it. The families of the slain teenagers ended up coming together, bonded by their shared tragedy and loss. Mary Lyons and the families started supporting each other and following all of the court proceedings and hoping to find justice and closure. So there wasn't a ton of movement in solving their teenagers' cases, but they were following the police, following after Bunny Holmes. So good old Sharalethea Holmes, was originally from Detroit, but later moved to Huntington because, like I had mentioned before, the drug trade was just more lucrative there, and that explains that kind of strange connection. Also, interestingly, about just shy of a year before the prom night murders, there was a different murder that Bunny was involved in. On July 28, 2004, a woman named Wendy Morgan was found dead in the 500 block of 5th Street in Huntington. She had been shot and was just dumped in the street. According to the witness that reached out to police, apparently Wendy had been staying with Bunny and allegedly drugs and or money had gone missing. Now, whether Wendy actually took the money and the drugs, we don't know, but Bunny certainly believed that she did. And that kind of sounds familiar, huh? On May 19th, 2006, a year after the prom murders, but 2 years after Wendy's body was discovered, Bunny was indicted for her murder. During the ensuing trial, Wendy's mother, Marcia, took the stand and explained that her daughter had been a student at Marshall University, and she actually was really smart and was studying on a full academic scholarship, but she suffered an injury that resulted in her needing a prescription for opiates. And you can see where that's going. So she developed an addiction to opioids. And to support this addiction, she started working in the sex trade. And I don't know how she met Bunny, but she was living with her and would bring the Johns to Bunny's house. It's a little bit muddy. We don't really know the details, but perhaps Bunny was acting like as Wendy's pimp. Maybe? At any rate, Wendy was living there with Bunny, who was supplying her with drugs and definitely was under her thumb. Marcia testified that Wendy had become very afraid of Bunny and was actually actively hiding from her. Other witnesses at the trial testified that Bunny ordered Wendy's death. The two men that Bunny had hired as shooters were charged as well. Raphael Roro Harris, who was originally supposed to be that getaway driver. He testified against Bunny and his accomplice, Cedile Gigi Harper. So Roro pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to a reduced sentence of 25 years. It should have been like 40 years. Gigi was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life with mercy, which in West Virginia just means that he can apply for parole after serving 15 years. Interestingly, that guy has filed like 7 appeals. He's been filing them pro se, which means no lawyer. Well, I mean, he'll have a lawyer and then he'll have a problem with that lawyer, fire them, and then fire some kind of messed up appeal. These 7 appeals are like a total mess, you know. Some are on the state level, some are on the federal level, and FYI, there's kind of an order, you know what I mean? You have to exhaust all of the state appeals before you can start going to the federal ones. GG. The last one that was filed was denied on the basis of timeliness. So, that's a bummer. Also, during Bunny's trial for Wendy's death, a very interesting nugget was revealed during the cross-examination. So, a guy named Larry Clark was a witness for the prosecution, so like a state witness. He said he had been a client of Bunny's and he had personal knowledge of Bunny wanting Wendy dead. When the defense questioned him, they tried to say that, you know, he was a crackhead. Of course, like, why should we trust you? But he said something about the murders on prom night. Larry testified, quote, apparently she has offered a lot of people money to kill other people, you know? And then the defense asked, have you been told to say that here? And then he said, no, I'm telling you that I know what happened, that I was there. I have no doubt in my mind that she ordered that woman's murder, and I have no doubt in my mind that she ordered 4 other kids in this town. The defense lawyer, all of the color drained out of his face, practically had a stroke. He petitioned the judge at that moment for a mistrial, but the judge denied that and just instructed the jury to disregard what you just heard. Also, during her trial, there was a massive drug case against her that ended up being dismissed because mishandling of evidence. Apparently, like 12,000 wiretapped phone calls. Something happened. 12,000 phone calls. 12,000. Anyways, it doesn't matter because Sharalethea Bunny Holmes was found guilty of first-degree murder for ordering Morgan's death. The jury deliberated for 2 hours and then they decided for her life with mercy, which again, in West Virginia means that you can apply for parole after 15 years. So the earliest date of eligibility for her will be November 2026. Bunny Holmes has been behind bars since 2008 for a very similar murder, but has never faced any additional charges, especially none relating to the prom night murders. So the families of these 4 teenagers still come together every year to commemorate their loved ones and to celebrate Teen Issues Day. No person has yet to be charged for the murders of Michael, Megan, Dante, or Edric. And that, friends, is the unsolved story of the prom night murders. Thanks again to Danielle for the recommendation for this truly terrible story. Thank you. Also, if you are interested in any of the makeup or anything that you saw me use in today's video, just check the description box because it's all down there for you. If you have a Crue Trime story that you would like to recommend, there is a Google Doc, a form that you can complete. Just, again, check the description box. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here every week, and you can follow me on all of the socials. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! Oh man. Bunny Holmes had, fuck, 4 teenagers. Did I bring an eye pencil? I don't think I did. We are continuing charges, especially named, wait, I can't get my shit together. Charged downtown to keep blah 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 blah.